At least 600 Aboriginal women have gone missing or been murdered over the last 30 years in Canada. They are 5 times more likely than other women to die violent deaths. The Metropolitan Action Committee on Violence Against Women and Children wanted to know why Aboriginal women are being targeted and asked a range of community members. All the women we spoke to saw colonization and genocidal policies as the root cause of the violence they experience as women and nations.
Our Two-Spirit people, our women and our children, historically and currently are the centers of our community. That's who we built around and who we continue to build around. And so to facilitate and make it easier for land theft to happen, it made sense to attack the center.
It totally has to do with power and control. It totally has to do with the fact that Europeans and the settlers came to this country with nothing.
Overrepresented in the prison system and increasingly facing charges and convictions when defending themselves against their abusers, survivors say the reasons are systemic and rooted in the racism of Canadian society and the law.
The Indian Act allowed and promoted the residential school system. The Indian Act allowed and promoted the 60 scoop. The Indian Act, to this end, promotes the violence against Aboriginal women.
Until 1985, Aboriginal women's identity was linked to whom they married. Only by marrying a man recognized by the Act to be Indian were they defined as such. If not, they lost all rights for themselves and their children to live on their territory. Even today, residual discrimination in the Act prevents some women from passing membership and rights onto their children, so that many descendants of Aboriginal women are not recognized under the Act. Interference and control of their nation's identity has also affected Métis and Inuit women adversely. Wary of the system, many Aboriginal women fleeing violence have nowhere to turn. Too often going to authorities results in the loss of their children once Child and Family Services are involved. Too often they are re-traumatized and re-victimized as they meet with ignorance and racism at the hands of those whose job it is to help.
The stereotype, I think, is that a lot of Native women do live on the street, that they prefer to live on the street, perhaps that they're promiscuous, drinking and doing drugs, which puts them in vulnerable situations. So there's this idea that perhaps they deserve any sort of violence that they come across.
I'll often hear comments, oh, you're Native, oh, you get tax breaks and all these special rights and education. And I think the undertone there is that our hands are out, that we're dependent, that we're lazy, that we're just takers. Actually, we've given all of our lands. We're actually, I believe, owed an immense amount.
Not one blueberry, not one strawberry, not the nickel, not the diamonds, not the uranium, not the hardwood lumber, the softwood lumber. None of those gross domestic products came with Europeans on those boats.
It's time to discard these racist stereotypes and see us for who we really are.
That every Aboriginal woman that walks into their services are different and unique, and they come from different places. Different life experiences will impact how they perceive service providers, so they have to be very aware that they may most likely have a history of service providers that may have harmed them in some way.
It wasn't always this way. Women, Two-Spirits, and children were respected and held positions of power in their communities prior to colonization, and they are continuing to do so in many ways today.
Where women make the decisions in our governance, where women determine, where women own the land, where women own the food, where women make those decisions because they impact totally our children.
We don't need saving. That's kind of how we got here in the first place. It's people trying to save us, people trying to change who we are to fit their own needs. And so we get to define who we are. We get to say who our women are. We get to say who our children are, who our Two-Spirit people are. We get to define that, nobody else.
One day we'll get to a point where we will not need any of these social services, and that these types of services will again be offered within the context of our own traditional systems. Because of course, they have always been there as well. Our communities have taken care of each other historically and been very successful at doing that. And that's what I would like to see happen, is to consider Indigenous approaches to providing services.
We know our stuff. We live this reality every single day, and so we're the experts on the solutions that we need and the changes that we need to see. And so when we're actually in a space where we can make those decisions, it's really, really amazing.